Decimalisation was one of the most significant transformations in the history of British currency, marking the moment when the United Kingdom abandoned a centuries-old monetary system and embraced a modern, logical, base 10 structure. For generations, people had lived with the pounds shillings a pence system, where a pound was divided into 20 shillings and each shilling into 12 pence, creating a total of 240 old pennies to the pound. This system had deep historical roots stretching back to medieval England and even further to Roman influences, and although it carried tradition and familiarity, it was notoriously awkward for calculations, accounting, pricing, and international trade. By the mid-20th century, Britain was one of the few remaining countries still using such a complex structure, and as global commerce expanded, the disadvantages became increasingly obvious. Businesses struggled with the arithmetic, schoolchildren had to learn convoluted conversions, and international partners found the system confusing. As early as the 19th century, there had been discussions about modernizing the currency, but it wasn't until the 1960s that the government finally committed to the change. In 1966, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, James Callaghan, announced that Britain would adopt a decimal currency, and the Decimal Currency Board was established to oversee the transition. This was not a simple task, it required years of planning, public education, and the production of entirely new coins. The Royal Mint, which had operated at Tower Hill for centuries, moved to a new facility in Llantrisant, Wales, specifically to handle the enormous scale of coin production required for the changeover. Billions of new coins had to be minted, tested, distributed, and introduced into circulation without disrupting the economy. To avoid confusion between old pennies and new pence, the early decimal coins were labeled new pence, a detail that collectors still recognize today. Meanwhile, the public needed to be prepared for the shift, so the government launched a nationwide information campaign. Schools taught children how the new system worked, banks trained staff, shops displayed dual prices, and television broadcasts explained the upcoming changes. The goal was to make the transition as smooth as possible, and despite initial worries, the British public adapted remarkably quickly. On February 15, 1971 Decimal Day, Britain officially switched to the new system. Banks closed briefly to update their systems, shopkeepers recalibrated tills, and people across the country handled the new coins for the first time. The halfpenny, or halfpenny, played an important role in easing the transition, helping prices convert neatly from the old system to the new. Although some older generations felt nostalgic for shillings and florins, the practicality of the decimal system soon became undeniable. Everyday tasks became easier, calculating change, balancing accounts, and teaching children about money all became far more straightforward. Businesses benefited from faster, clearer pricing, and Britain aligned itself with the global norm of decimal currency, making international trade and financial communication more efficient. Decimalisation also marked the end of many traditional denominations, such as the farthing, the florin, the crown, and the half-crown, each with its own history and cultural significance. Yet the new coins brought a fresh identity, with designs that reflected modern Britain while still honoring its heritage. Over time, the phrase new pence was replaced with pence as the public fully adjusted, and the decimal system became second nature. Looking back, decimalisation stands as a moment when Britain chose clarity over complexity, modernization over tradition, and practicality over nostalgia. It was a national effort involving government, industry, education, and the public, and its success is often cited as an example of how large-scale change can be implemented smoothly with proper planning. Today, it is difficult to imagine the old system in everyday use, and younger generations often find it astonishing that such a complicated structure once existed. Decimalisation didn't just change the coins in people's pockets, it reshaped the way the country thought about money, numbers, and modern life. It brought Britain into alignment with the rest of the world, simplified countless daily tasks, and closed the chapter on a monetary system that had survived for hundreds of years. In doing so, it became one of the most important milestones in the long and fascinating story of British coinage.